Guys, welcome back to the FreeMelon Society. I'm Eli Martyr. We've got a guest here today, someone that I've been dying to get onto the show. We've got Mr. Johnny Gonzalez here. And we're going to be going through a topic that I found quite important, that I really wanted to have shared on this channel. And so I met Johnny when I was in Ohio for the Erit Day conference, and he gave a fantastic presentation on child protective services. All right, now I'm not going to go into this too much. I'm going to let Johnny explain it as we go on in this interview. But he gave a presentation on child protective services and what they really are and what they really stand for, what their purpose really is. And he has poured a lot of research into this and has a lot of direct experience as well. And the reason I found this very important was because here on this channel, you know that I talk a lot about diet, health, wellness, spirituality, all that kind of stuff. And we talk about the affronts, the war that is waged against humanity from every conceivable direction. And this is another one of them, right? So the purpose of this chat here is, again, to add another little dot on the map, right? Another little peg that you can plug into understanding how the world around you works, right? Because we're trying to understand two things: how we work and how the world around us works. The two most important bodies of knowledge that we have, that we can research. So, without speaking my face off here, let's introduce Johnny, Mr. Johnny Gonzalez. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're here. Looking forward to what we have to say today.
Thank you for having me, Eli. Just by your introduction, it reminded me so much of how great of a communicator and listener you are.
Thank you.
And when we met in Ohio, I really felt a strong sense of I was so privileged to have met your acquaintance, and the things that we talked about I still cherish to this day. And I'm really glad that we were able to connect on this specific topic. And I really liked how you pointed out the spiritual side that's involved in something like this, where when at first glimpse you take something like CPS and you ask any person, well, what do you think CPS is for? And for most people, we have an idea that Child Protective Services is supposed to be a form of protection for children that are physically, mentally, sexually abused and or neglected. Now, that idea is probably common. It's common knowledge.
Yeah.
But when you actually meet people and communicate with people who have had involvement with Child Protective Services, that's not what you're hearing.
Right.
So, like everyone else, when I was first introduced to Child Protective Services as an adult, I had a very bad experience with them. And that led me to go down the rabbit hole of
Right.
How are they doing what they're doing? What is governing them? What laws are they abiding by? And who is their authoritative head? Who oversees them?
Right.
And any rational person who starts to go down these rabbit holes, they're going to identify for themselves a lot of corruption, fraud, and that alone right there just it just turns everything upside down, basically, because now you're in a position of like, wow, is this really happening?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I have to share my story because that's going to help. That's going to help put a reference to this. But
Well,
Go ahead.
okay, yeah, no, right. So right before you do, okay, so yeah, I think you know what, maybe that's the best place to start. You just give us
Mhm.
a brief background of where you're coming from, and then
Mhm.
once we know where you're coming from, then we can get into the rest of the details.
Yeah.
And because basically what we want to do, I might as well just tell the audience what we're going to be trying to do. So the first thing we want to do is we want to define exactly like what you did, just define our terms. And because these organizations, it's like it's like a front company, a front organization like the mafia or the mob or some other gang of some sort, right? You have the face of the front, which is what the ostensible function of the business is. So we want to define or just go into what the ostensible face of the business is or the institution. Then we want to go into what they actually do and what they actually represent, right? And essentially that's it. That's all we want to do. We just want to expose people to the lie and then the truth based on your research and your own experience. And then any extra little details are just cherries on the cake. So yeah, so let's start with that. Give us just a general recap of what you experienced with CPS, and then we can go from there.
In 2020, I was on vacation with my 10-month-year-old Journey, his two older siblings, and mother and I were taking them for a little beach vacation. So we get to the beach on Friday, and normal day, normal evening, everything was okay. Saturday morning we get up, and our 10-month-year-old he's like lethargic. He's laying there, he's real lethargic. And I was actually downstairs at the time. Mother came and said, "Hey, something's wrong with our baby." And so I picked him up and held him. We walked up to the broom, and we decided to, because of his condition, we decided to take him to the emergency room. So we took him to the emergency room, and he was seen, he was examined, he had all his tests done. And at that position in time, they diagnosed him with a low glucose level. And because he was only 10 months, they decided to transfer him to a children's hospital. So he's transferred to a children's hospital, and within an hour or two, a CPS social worker came on call and started asking him other questions and ended up detaining him there at the hospital. Later on that evening, I was contacted because it was during the whole COVID timeframe, so only one parent was permitted into the hospital. I was contacted later that evening. I was interviewed, questioned, and this is probably the time frame where people will start to come to the sense like, hey, something doesn't seem right here, because you're already being investigated as you did something incorrectly, or that there's something that occurred that was your fault. Well, that's exactly what ended up happening. Was based off of the findings of the children's hospital doctor, who also happens to be the child protective director at the hospital. She had said that our son was suffering from severe malnourishment and looked like as if he was starved for days. So the CPS ended up taking him at that point, took away our visitations,
Oh,
and then started to take us through the court proceedings. That these
I have one question. So you said just because I just want to make sure that I'm following right. The CPS or the worker at the hospital was employed by the hospital as well as CPS. Like, so it was a CPS agent that was already there working at the hospital.
correct. The main doctor who was overseeing our specific case was the CPS medical director doctor.
So doctor and CPS employee at the same time.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So
It's interesting.
at this point, and I probably should clarify this too, because we'll probably end up speaking about this a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But I got in 2012, I was chronically sick. Suffered colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease,
Oh, wow.
on all these medications. And at that point in time, I was in a low place physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah.
And I decided to change my lifestyle and my diet.
Mm.
And that's what led me to veganism. That's what led me to fruitarianism.
Yeah.
That's what kept me raw for many years. And so from about 2014 till now, I've done all of the detoxification lifestyle practices. I'm still vegan. I still practice the mucus diet healing system. But I point that out because when we were being questioned and told about what had happened to Journey, that background came forward. And this was looking hindsight. If I would have never said, or mother would have never said we were vegans or we didn't consume meat or dairy, then the circumstances of what had happened would have been different.
Right.
But because that information was disclosed, this is what instigated the cause for the diagnosis of being severely malnourished and starved for days.
Right.
Because at this point in time, that was their conclusion from the very beginning, that was what was wrong with him. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to take a little step, because we're already in the process.
Right.
So now it's irrelevant when you go through the judicial, the quote unquote judicial process that you're being conducted under, which again, now we're going to start getting into the law a little bit, where this will be an eye opener for most people, because like we talked about, there's a forefront. You have CPS and they're supposed to do this. They're supposed to be righteous and holy and take care of the kids that are going through the severe problems in life. And we have to intervene to help them.
Right.
That's the forefront. But now it's like, okay, well, what are the laws behind what they can and can't do? What are the regulations? What is the procedures? What are the practices? This is the part now where we got to, I look at it like I was just thrown into the den and saying, fend for yourself and stay alive. So that's basically what had happened. And I was just fortunate enough to, well, I mean, logically speaking, I knew something was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was too intense of a situation to not think that this was normal, because this wasn't normal.
Yeah, because you like everybody would assume that what this institution that is supposed to be for the benefit of the child, they always got this catchphrase, for the benefit of the child, for the best interest of the child, right? That's what it's ostensibly set up to be. So you would imagine that you take that at face value, right? This institution that interfaces with the state, with government, why would they be doing anything other than what they claim to be doing, right? And so we've got Child Protective Services, which seems to be exactly what it sounds like, right? Protecting children from abusive parents, neglectful parents, bad environments, anything that detracts from the better upbringing of a kid. And this institution is there to ensure that doesn't happen. So that's what we're dealing with. And of course, you, like everybody else, would naturally assume that that's what's happening. You take them at the word, and now you've got this experience that you're sharing with me now. So correct me on whatever it is I've said, and of course, yeah, continue with your story.
Cool. Yeah. So I want to try to paint the cleanest picture. I want it to be clear because there's a lot of moving pieces that are occurring as you're going through this, and those moving pieces have relevance and significance, and everything's on a time structure where the clock is already ticking. So the situation went from, we believe, I'm a doctor in a hospital, I believe that you starved your kids, or you starved this kid, and what happened was because it was your fault. Now, we got to be rational about this. So I'm that doctor who said that, and I'm telling all these people underneath me, I think that these parents starved this kid. I don't know your background. I don't know the baby's background. I don't have any idea about a feeding schedule or lifestyle, or I know nothing about you. But because I was told that this parent's a vegan and this little baby has these symptoms occurring, I'm just going to conclude from my studies and my beliefs that you did this. And that's what was the grounds to do what they did. So there wasn't any firsthand witnesses. There wasn't any firsthand knowledge. It was only based off of an assumption. So now CPS is involved. They detained our son, and they said you cannot have visits until you go to court. So now they take you to court. Now, the process is that parents are being governed under when they go to family court or juvenile court. It's an administrative tribunal court. It's not a judicial process. This is why when you go to these courts, you have a bench officer, which is basically a judge that's going to make the determination off of the lowest standard of evidence, which would be the preponderance of the evidence.
Right.
And they're going to decide the fate of your family. Now, just like that. So they put you through a process. In California, it goes from detention, and then it goes to jurisdiction, and then to disposition, and then to a 366 parental termination rights hearing. So you have, in each state has its own processes that you go through. So that initial detention hearing is basically the court saying the quote unquote child is a dependent of the state. So we have the best interest to do what's right for this child. Now, when you start to study law, the language they use it's a completely different language than what we believe it to be.
Yes. So
we're talking in English right now, and I can say child, and both you and I on a surface level will think, well, child is, a little kid. It's a youngling. But by definition in law, it's not what it's intended to be. It's an individual, a person. So now you put yourself in these word salads that they play on words. So now the child is a dependent of the state. So what I've come to the realization on is, well, how are they doing this? Like, how does a child become a child? How does, for example, there's a mother and a father. They use parents. You look at the definition of parents, it's not the same as what we would think it to be. They use these manipulation of words to try to induce us into contracting, because administrative processes is a contracting process. There has to be an agreement between the parties.
Agreement, correct.
So what happens in these juvenile proceedings that are mimicking court processes is that the people who are involved, they're subject to this jurisdiction. So in order for somebody to have the authority to control another person or environment, you have to have proper jurisdiction. So, for example, if I invite you over to my house and I say, take your shoes off before you enter my house, that's a rule, and you don't oblige by those rules, and let's say I have a punishment for that, you're subjected to my punishment because you're now in my jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I can control what's going on in my jurisdiction. So when you go through these processes, I mean, this applies to all. I mean, not just it applies to CPS courts, family courts, traffic courts. All of these are just. I mean, everything is wrong side up. It's upside down. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's only a what is that called? A fictition of your imagination, or
a figment of your imagination.
Figment of your imagination.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when I say they've, I mean the quote unquote government has created these agencies to have a sense of value in our reality.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've come to learn after 2 years is that's the reality that has been created around us. They're using a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen as control of to have jurisdiction over everybody.
Right.
So there's a doctrine called parens patriae doctrine that you can have the audience look into, and that basically means that the state is the father.
Right.
Everybody that's underneath that, those are his children. So he has control over all of the children. So when we raise our hand as a U.S. citizen, and then we go and we reference the 14th Amendment, you can start to make sense of, well, why is my birth certificate in all upper caps? Why is my driver's license in all upper caps? Why is my social security in all upper caps? Why is all of the documents that say my name on it, but it's in all upper caps?
Yeah.
That's a legal entity that has been created from the birth certificate. And that's your registration right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the state version of you. That's your two-dimensional version of whoever you are on paper. So when you think about the all upper caps name, the only place you ever see all upper caps is in a cemetery on tombstones.
Mm-hmm.
Every single name on there is all upper caps because they're dead.
They're dead. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we interface with government, every single person could go to their state constitution and read the preamble. And in there, it'll say that we, the people, created the government and we're the ones in charge. Period. That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's supposed to be. But you have these agencies now that are just interfacing with other agencies, and the citizens are it's like our cattle. This is our sheep. These are our people right here. So now we gotta partake in what they're saying and doing, because we haven't stood on what our forefathers fought to create, was that freedom that each of us have to be self-governed and to be part of the Republican of your state. And with that power, it separates us from government.
Mm.
So I've went down the rabbit hole with CPS to try to figure all of this out. And I'm not going to say I diverted too much, because it has significance and relevance to CPS and how they're operating, because you can go online and just spend 3 days on looking up groups and websites and like Facebook groups and things of that nature about CPS. And you're going to see that there's hundreds of thousands of parents that are suffering from this. And you're not going to find a solution online with just one person, or somebody that has the golden ticket,
Right.
or the magical keys that open all the doors, because this is a topic that we're it's like we're playing their game still.
That's
You could
right.
try to fix it doing this route, but you're still playing their game. You can
That's
try to
right.
fix it with this route, but you're still playing their game. So I'm well aware of the analogy of the hamster on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
running on the hamster wheel, it didn't take too long for me to realize, like, I'm not going anywhere trying to play
Exactly.
these games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is what now my purpose and mission is to try to figure out the steps needed to separate yourself from this illusion, this game that they're playing with us and using us as pawn pieces.
Absolutely.
And at the sanctity of taking our kids.
Yeah.
Now we go back now to CPS. So now you have all of these governing rules that you have to go through with the courts. And you have all these reports that will start to be generated. Anybody that goes through a CPS process, you're expected to get at least 1,000 pages of just information that has nothing to do but trying to demonize you as a parent. And every single person that I know that has been involved with CPS, they've gotten these reports as well. It goes clear across the board, because all of these agencies have procedures. They have a template that tells them what to do, how to be, how to act, and how to govern everybody underneath your level. Because there's levels to this.
Okay.
It's just like a con scheme.
Yeah.
You don't tell everybody everything. You compartmentalize each of the people involved, and only as you go up that pyramid that they start to know more and more.
Right. Of course.
So everybody underneath, all you got to do is sign papers and take their signatures. That's
all
it.
they know. Yeah.
So when you go in there and you ask about something beyond there, they're going to reference you to someone above them.
That's it. Just really quickly, I want to add that in this system, as they have it set up, this compartmentalized system where they're using, you said something very important there, the legalese, the language that they use to fool you into consent. And there's this very old understanding where evil only operates after you've given them consent to operate, right? You see it in these old tales of the vampire that can't come into your house unless you offer it in, right? Or unless you invite it in, excuse me. We see this everywhere. This is the idea behind subliminal seduction, where agents of evil program subliminal messaging into programming. And so in their belief system, it's like, if you don't say anything, well, I told you. Now, whether you can read the symbols or not, that's irrelevant. But my conscience is clear because I told you and you didn't do anything. You accepted, right? So the world has set up this system where it tries to fool you and deceive you into contracting with them, right? Into accepting. And this language, this legalese language, where dog does not mean dog, cat does not mean cat, right? They're literally speaking a different language to you, not telling you that they're not speaking your language, and they interpret that as consent, right? And they dominate us with that. And it's frustrating. I know you've been down the rabbit hole, and man, it is, once you start understanding, it's really, really fascinating just how intricate this web of deceit and deception goes.
As I started to learn about the process that I was being involved with, I started to look and research the background and history of CPS, and also the purpose. Like, why would they take kids away from parents and then try to put them in an adoption program right away? That didn't make sense to me. So when I actually went through the hearing, they're like, okay, well, we're gonna give custodial basically rights to the state or to the agency, and we're gonna let them decide where they're gonna take the child. And then when they told me we're gonna put them in an adoption agency, you hear that without having any knowledge, it doesn't make any sense. So then I went down those rabbit holes, and I followed the money. That's all I did is I followed the money. And then it turns around and this comes to the surface is that, well, if you take a child from a parent and put it into the foster incentive program, they get paid. There's incentives behind this.
Right. That's right.
So now how many kids you take matters. If you place them with the parent, they get less money. You place them with an adoptive parent, they get more money. You have all these parents go through all these classes, they get more money. You adopt the kid, you get money. So there's money behind everything, and everybody that's involved as you're going up those chains of command that know this information, they're getting funded for this. So then I thought, well, then what's the purpose with the doctor? Why is there a CPS agency in the hospital? Well, they get grants, they get block grants that you report these, and based off of the amount of reports, well, here's some funding for yourself to go and do what you need. And then this really started to make sense to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is the same bullshit in the pharmaceutical industry and the allopathic medicine industry. It's the same thing. They're doing the exact same thing for money, for the embetterment of the people. Medicine doesn't make you healthy. Chemotherapy and radiation doesn't make you healthy. It doesn't fix the problem. So it's effed up, plain and simple. So then I was like, oh my gosh, all these light bulbs just started to turn on. And I went from a grieving parent to an angry parent. Now I'm like, wait a minute. Now this is not right. Because mind you, in the beginning phases of those first couple of weeks, I was being told that I starved my son. I didn't feed him correctly. And that this was the cause to what had happened to him. And I don't care how strong you are, if you're hearing that every single day and you're seeing reports and it's being repetitive nature of every day you're getting emails about this, you're going to have some senses of like, dang, did I really do something wrong? And at this point in time in my life, I was already a detoxification specialist. I was already a practitioner, and I've already helped hundreds of people at this point in time in 2020. Because I've devoted so many years to what I practice and preach and teach to people. So this is where the rubber meets the road right here, because as I started to uncover more and more details and history about CPS and what was really happening, and questioning my judgment and questioning my character and me as a person, and a father, because I have 4 other kids. So, it's not like I was just randomly, I'm going to go kill someone or, hurt somebody. Like, it was never like that. This is ridiculous. But again, in those moments of weaknesses, it makes you reflect heavily. And that's all I could do. If you get your baby ripped from you, you're going to make changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what
at that point, kind of what really pushed me over the edge, though, was on a visit, me and the mother were going to go to the hospital to see our baby. and we were arrested. And I was arrested, thrown in jail, and left in there for 12 days. And during those 12 days, I really had an opportunity to reflect. And I really had an opportunity to go within myself, because that's all that I really had at that point in time.
12 days is a lot. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and sorry, the charge being
basically, it's in California, it's just child abuse. Child abuse and neglect. Yeah. It's a penal code. Every state has their own type of code, that for a criminal code, basically.
That is shocking, man. That is friggin' shocking. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. So this is why now I started to really get into the law. Mm-hmm. I had to know the law. I had to know what was happening. I had to know that, what do I got to do to defend myself and protect myself and get out of this. So I just started picking up the books. I just started reading. I knew right from the start, though, that attorneys was the only people that I was interacting with. I had a district attorney. There was an attorney that was put on my offspring. There was an attorney put on me to represent me. There was an attorney to represent the mom. The judge is an attorney. The prosecutor for CPS has an attorney. So at this point in time, I'm like, F attorneys. I'm not going to get an attorney. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have somebody else fight for my son, fight for my family. But what I found out was that in CPS courts and family courts, they don't want you to do this by yourself. They force attorneys onto you.
Force.
Yes, force. I went through 5 attorneys because I said, I'm not gonna take an attorney. And they said, well, we're going to put one on you anyway. And I said, I want to have a hearing to remove this attorney.
Yeah.
So they would remove the attorney. They'd put another one on me. So they kept doing that. We went through that cycle for 5 times.
Yeah.
And then, and at this point in time, like I said, I was already way down in the rabbit hole, full speed. And in regards to like the criminal case, again, I was able to get rid of my attorney there. I knew that the standard of evidence was a lot higher because it goes beyond a reasonable doubt. I knew from the start that they didn't have a case because nobody, not even the closest members of my family, except for maybe my brother, my younger brother Anthony, really saw my son every single day. Aside from me and the mother. You know, we were already very secluded from our family. And when we took our son any place, it was for, just for a visit or just to go and for a barbecue or to go here. No one ever just babysitted him and watched him for overnight or 2 days or anything of that sort. Yeah. So no one could really say that we did anything wrong. So, and I knew that. And I knew that from the start. And all of the evidence that they were trying to use was all hearsay. Oh, we think you did this. We don't know for sure, but we think that you didn't feed him, or we think that he didn't have enough protein.
Oh, God.
We think he didn't have enough calories.
Yeah.
So I went through a whole criminal trial already, and we ended up getting a hung jury, which basically just is a mistrial. And they're attempting to try to do the case again. We'll see how that goes. It's been continued out for way into next 2023. So we'll see how that unfolds. But nonetheless, the point being made here is that this situation has really pushed me down a pathway in my life that I probably wouldn't have taken openly and voluntarily, but I felt the necessity for the experience, because there is a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
And being that, I know when I've had the opportunity to talk with you and communicate with you, I don't have to censor myself, or I don't have to explain my words or my vocabulary, because you have a stronger understanding of knowingness that you can resonate and communicate on a more intellectual and closer level than most conversations that I have with people.
Yeah.
Because I could only speak surfacely. I can't get into the deep stuff, which, we're probably going to have to dive a little bit into deeper waters, because what did this experience, like, we can look at CPS as a physical, that this physically did happen. And yes, the CPS is a for-profit agency. Yes, they profit from this. Yes, they get incentives for taking kids. Yes, there is statutes and codes that allow this to happen. Along with that, when your offspring are adopted out, there's more money being brought into the state and into the county. So this has for federal funding, it has a purpose for numbers.
Right.
They want to see the numbers.
Right.
The numbers have to meet certain levels in order to keep this train rolling.
Right.
So that's why the standards for evidence are so low. Because if everybody had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that means that there has to be 2 witnesses that saw you beat your kid and throw him in the road and walk away and leave him there. That's 2 people have to go on a stand and say, hey, this is what really happened. You can't say 2 people said that they heard you through your window. They heard you, did this or this and this. They don't know. You didn't see it for yourself. So you can't testify to that.
Yeah.
So the standards are so low. So you have all these cases where they just it's like a milk train. They're just sanding them in, and they're just trying to get in and out. Boom, paycheck, in and out, paycheck, in and out, paycheck. That's all that they're doing. So that is true. That is happening. And it's evil. Yes. It's wrong. Yes. But we should all know that if as much evil is going on in the world, we have to recognize that it's not right. Like, it's wrong on so many levels. You don't have to be religious or have to be spiritual. You can just use common sense. Is this right or is this wrong?
Yeah.
And for the most part, we could all say, as a collective, we could all say, hey, stuff that's going on in this world is not right. Regardless of our backgrounds and beliefs, it's not right. So this is why I said, well, yeah, all this is happening with CPS, but why? Okay, it's for they want to take kids for profit, or they're getting money from this. Money's backing this. Okay, that makes sense. But why though? What's the deeper spiritual? What's beyond? What's underneath the soil? Let's get a little bit deeper now.
Right.
Because if you look at it like medicine, if somebody gets sick, they go to the doctor, and the doctor wants to give them medicine. That doctor, on some level, believes that this medicine is beneficial to them in some way, shape, or form. They may not completely agree, but they know that's their paycheck. They know that's their life. That's that's what they do. That's what they were taught. That's what their educational showed them. So they just do it. But those that come out of that rat race, you're like, wow, they're killing people with all these medications. What's really hurting cancer and getting all these death rates is because they're doing it. They're inducing it. It's happening faster. So you take a person that has cancer and you just let them be. Then you take person B that has cancer and you take them to the hospital and they're doing radiation and chemo and medication. That person is going to die faster than the person that has cancer and doesn't do anything.
Absolutely.
So that's where we could both agree that, like, well, there's a lot of darkness or evil that's happening. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to look at it from that perspective too. Okay, well, you have a bunch of black robe judges, a bunch of attorneys. And then if you start to look at it from that perspective, you have an outside source trying to take your kids from you and do with them as they please, medicate them, drug them, vaccinate them, and take them away from a loving family of that sentimental bond that you get from an infant to mother, an infant to father. Those things are ritual. Those things are so important and passionate for the development. So then it's like, well, why would somebody do that? Like, there has to be some sense of somebody on the top that's playing playing the fiddles that we are not really looking towards. We can sit here and, for most Americans, at least, we'd be like, we're Christians. They believe that, there's God, there's the devil, and there's, Jesus Christ, and there's the angels, and like there's a spiritual knowing. For most people, there is a spiritual knowing. But to say who's right or wrong, well, we're not trying to go there. We're just trying to know that it's there. So the presence of God is there, but then with the presence of God can also be the presence of whatever you would call the devil or evil or wrongdoing. It's that free choice. The God power is free will. You can use it for the best of mankind, or you can use it for the worst of mankind.
That's right. You're going to have that adversarial force, right? You could call it the adversary, the antithesis, right? It's that dualistic principle. And I do not want to derail your train of thought here, because you said so many important things, and I think I am just going to try to like recapitulate and then keep going on. So we already know what this thing is supposed to be, but now we come into the reality of the facts. Okay, so you've got an institution that makes money off of the amount of people that they bring in, the amount of kids that they possess, right? So they make money for the state. That is a problem. That is right. I mean, if that were it, that would be enough to just completely defund this organization, tear it down, never to be seen again. Because that conflict of interest will destroy families, right? I mean, if I run an assassination business and the goal of the business is to take out awful people, great. But now, what if if operating in a community where there are just no awful people, like, a community of monks and whatever? Well, what's going to happen to my business? I'm going to go out of business. So I have to create bad people to go after, right? My business is corrupt just by the structure, by the very structure. So we've got this one thing that is a glaring offense, okay? If we're going to make sense of the reality, for people listening, we always have to remember that the state is trying to be this third wheel in all human relationships. It's trying to jump between and be a wedge in between the male and the female in the relationship and the family, and take that over and take over the role and the functions of the family, right? And it's trying to hijack them so that the state owns not only you, but your child, okay? Yes, of course, you did mention this. So you've got this other element, right? Now, in this structure whereby not only are they making money for the state, okay, red flag, but they're also taking control of your child and marrying them to the state in a very socialistic, communistic type of fashion. And anyone who's understood or studied the way the world works, we have to understand that this is the direction that the world is taking us, that they want to take us, is complete control of everything. And we require this socialist kind of communist state in order to do that. Okay. So that's another red flag. And then the other element is you've got this darker aspect of this, where the kids that are being taken under the protective service, I don't like using that word because obviously it's a misnomer, but people who are being taken into this web, of deceit by CPS, and there are other agencies too. There's like DHS. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but it also, because if you're statistically looking at the amount of things like child abuse, exploitation, I'm going to go ahead and say it, murder, right, of kids going missing, the amount of kids that undergo these atrocities under the protection under the watchful eye of CPS is so disproportionate on the side of CPS as it would be for just parents, right? Just regular parents of children, right? And this feeds a very dark and seedy underground trade of children. You guys know what I'm getting at, all right? I'm sure you guys can put two and two together and fill in the blanks what I'm trying to not say directly, but you know what I'm getting at, okay? And I think those are three very, very, very glaring elements of this debate that we need to be mindful of, okay? So if you didn't know, now you're starting to get the idea that this is what not only CPS, but other institutions like this are very likely part and parcel of, okay? So just wanted to put that out there so that we're all kind of following along all on the same page. I hope I didn't derail you too much, but this is so important. Oh my God, when it comes to the kids and the families, it starts to boil my blood, and really, really happy that you're here to be able to share this with us. But okay, so continue on with what you were saying earlier. And sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah,
that was definitely needed information to help connect the dots, because all of it does very intertwine one another in these aspects. Because when you take a child and you put them in a foster care, they're shipped off to who knows where, and a high percentage, I want to say 85%, 86%, if I'm not mistaken, of cases regarding missing children or rape or murder, all of those, the high percentage is coming from the care and custody of Child Protective Services.
That's right.
So we have to take that into consideration. Mind you, the media is controlled. The media is bought and controlled. So you're not going to hear about this being front news on all these broadcasting networks. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
The CPS industry in each state is $1 billion industry, if not more. And that has to be like, you have to on some sensible level connect the dots to realize, well, why is this for-profit business corporation making that much money in the sanctity of helping and protecting abused and neglected kids? And the high percentage of those cases are not abused and neglected kids. They're just somebody did an anonymous, because someone called in anonymously. Someone left the report anonymously, and they said the house was super dirty, and so the CPS worker just took them.
Yeah,
that happens more often than it doesn't. So, like I said, when you go down these groups and you start to hear stories and hear families of what they've gone through and what they've dealt with, you realize it's not operating how it should be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you start to learn the law and the governing factors behind it, you realize that too is incorrect, and most of it is BS. But again, ignorance of law is no excuse. And we have become ignorant of the law because they took the law out of the schools.
Right.
At some point in time, we knew all this. Our great grandparents knew about the law. They knew about their rights. And 50 years ago, I heard the story from one of my mentors. He says, 50 years ago, if CPS tried to come and take somebody's kids, there would be neighbors there with their guns that would say, "I don't think that's going to happen, sir. You need to be on your way."
Yeah.
That's not how it works now. Now CPS comes with officers with guns, and they're saying, listen to what they're saying, or we're going to arrest you.
Yeah.
So there's just so much behind all of this that if even just having a show about this and getting this information out there should be helpful and beneficial for each of us to connect and put the dots together ourselves. So I'm glad you did that a little bit. But in regards now back to the connecting piece from the opposite side of like, okay, well then what's the evil? What's the evil that's behind this? What is the purpose?
What? Yeah.
And you brought out a very key point, is the separation of the family.
Yeah.
You take away the family unit. Anybody knows that if you have a strong functional foundation under any building, that's the most important aspect. So when you take that foundational elements that make a strong foundation, you separate them, now it becomes less of a unit. It becomes less as powerful. So the attack on the family has been happening for a long time, and it goes intertwined with the attack on gender. Now you have all these soft men, and you have these outspoken women, and then this imbalance of this chemical imbalance. But I think that's a health thing, to be honest with me. I mean, if I really want to get into that, that's mental issues are health issues. Mm-hmm. So, and the programming of the media doesn't help at all, because that's all they highlight. Yeah. So it's just like when COVID happened, why the hell was everybody out buying toilet paper? Like that's like the most, that was media. Media was doing that.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that just, I always have to reference that, because sometimes people don't realize it. You don't realize you're being manipulated or brainwashed until it's already happening.
Yeah.
So now I see the attack on the family.
Yeah.
And the attack on the babies. Now they're trying to pass vaccination for the babies for COVID. So there is an attack on the species of humankind. And the powers that be are going to try to do as much in order to prevent us from reaching the pinnacle of our health, the pinnacle of our existence, the enlightenment of spirit through the physical vessel.
Yeah.
That's truly there. And I believe in past times it has happened before. And I believe that we're reaching that point in time where technology is catching up, the awareness of consciousness is catching up, more people are starting to awaken. And now it's like, we got to bring them back down. And we got to do these drastic things to not let that happen. So that's another element, of course, to add to that, which kind of fits in with what you brought up and what we just talked about right now.
Mm-hmm. Where a lot of people lose interest, right? When they hear stuff like this, not lose interest, but it's kind of like their attention fades, is because what they can't do is they can't wrap their heads around a why. There's they can't for the life of them understand, why would an institution, a governmental or non-governmental institution, a charity or whatever it is, why would they be operating in this super evil and dark way, right? And if they can't understand a why, you won't be compelling, right? They'll turn off and they're not going to be paying attention. And so this is so good, because I think this is going to be providing the why, right? If you guys out there, if you always keep this in mind when you look at the world and movements and popular culture and keep this in mind. They are coming for the family. All right. If you just keep that one peg, that one kernel of information present in mind when you try to make sense of the movements of the world, particularly the ones that they put in your face that they want you to see, okay? Keep in the back of your mind, they want the family, right? And that really helps to understand the why, okay? Whether they want the family through this this ridiculous gender confusion program, and infusing the children with all these confusing elements of 50 different genders and whatnot. Okay, why are they doing that? Because it ensures strange, confused families. The likelihood of a strong nuclear family is almost nil if you if you program a generation of kids with all these weird notions, right? Then you've got these institutions like CPS and DHS, and they're just doing the same thing. They're getting in the way, and they're controlling the family by the state. Okay, so the world starts to make a lot more sense when you understand this one element of why. There are many whys. Okay, the money is one thing that I'd say that's more of a, for them, a convenient byproduct. But then there's a deeper and darker, like almost like cult like religious why that is to them much more important. Okay, so that's a reality, and it's up to us to if we want to investigate that further, we can, but just have the general layout of how and why this works. Okay, so that's what we're doing here today.
And just to touch on what you just said, the whys, keep this in mind when you think of the whys. The whys differ from person to person based off of their intellectualness of knowing what's really going on. So why would a low-level caseworker who doesn't know anything about the law, doesn't know anything about so-and-so, why would they do what they do? Because, again, they only know that, hey, there was a report that this family did this, go check it out. If anything looks suspicious, just bring them back. It's simple. It's a job task for them. So the why is very simple. But then you go up the ladder, so then you have the people that they know that the amount of kids that are being taken provides the whole business more money. It's a more lucrative service. So their why is a little bit more knowledgeable of the money. They know that they have to meet a certain quota. They have to meet a certain amount to receive specific types of grants that they'll get from the federal government. And then you go to now even above that, where you have the ones that know the darkness that CPS comes from, and the rituals and the practices of the wordplay, the practices of casting spells, things of that nature. They go up. So as you keep going up the whys do change.
Yeah.
Definitely so.
At a certain compartment, there will be people that are doing the job for a couple of reasons. And then as you move up that hierarchy, you realize, oh, there's a different motivation at this level. Oh, there's a different motivation at this level. And you keep moving up that ladder, and then you're gonna find some really, really, really insidious motivations and reasons for why they do what they do.
So we went down the rabbit hole of the whys and the compartmentalizing the functions and awareness of this agency, which now I want to try to piece in a puzzle to the families that are going through this. When I look at my situation, and I've gone through hundreds at this point of hearings, trials, court dates, all the paperwork I've done, all of the case law and references to support the foundational liberty of a child and parent relationship. Those essential elements are not supposed to be touched with or messed with at all. That has nothing to do with the government. Yet here we are, here are so many families, hundreds of thousands of people that are dealing with this as well. But in 2022, there is no solution. I can't go online and be like, oh, I could find this person or this group that knows how to fix this. And this is why it's been so challenging for me, because I'm looking for a solution.
Yeah.
So here we are coming up on 3 years now, and I'm still in limbo with the courts. And I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, I would have to write a complete list of all of the measures I've taken with learning and trying to file paperwork, get in contact with the sheriff, get in contact with the FBI, get in contact with your assembly people, your congressman. Like, I've gone through these steps to a very a very out there, I don't see too many people, if I look to my left and I look to my right, that are really fighting in the ways that I feel that I have. So there still hasn't been, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have optimistic hopes. I do know that at some point it's going to get figured out. And at some point in time, getting and putting myself in a situation that's going to allow me to fix these problems. Because don't get me wrong, this is fraud and corruption at a highest level, but it's the translation from me saying it to actually putting it on paper, supporting it with the law, supporting it with what it's necessary to get it filed into a federal district court. In America, we don't have Article 3 courts anymore, which is those are the only courts we should be going to. The people should be going to. But that's not the case, because they try to run you through all these administrative proceedings. So this is where now, like I said, trying to figure this out. At some point in time, I said, you know what? I have been so outwardly focused, trying to find a resolution. Let's grab my effing mirror and let me put the mirror in front of me, and let's start there. Let's figure this out from there. And as we touched on very briefly about the spiritual component, where, there are dark forces that are pushing this. We're trying to rip the family apart, trying to confuse the kids, trying to make men weak, trying to make everybody submissive and compliant to follow orders and follow directions, so we can be controlled.
Yeah.
So there is a source that's doing that. But then there's also this element, and this is the element that I want to share with the families. If your family has gone through a situation with CPS and this dark force, it didn't happen randomly. Something internally in your own dialogue, in your own thoughts, has attracted this force to your life for some significance and some purpose. Now, with that being said, as I said, the reason why I said you take a look in the mirror is because you weren't the happiest person in the world and the most loving person in the world to make this situation happen to you. You're not the victim. And when I stopped and thought about that, I said to myself, oh my gosh, if this is true, then what have I been doing to make this happen? And that's self-responsibility right there. And that's why it's so difficult for a lot of people to ingest, especially something like this, because you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to accept your mistakes and accept however and whatever the reason being, but always be hopeful of this. It's for a reason. It's for some specific growth inside of you, inside of your family unit, to improve and make things better. And when you come back from this, you're going to be 1,000 times stronger, 1,000 times more loving, 1,000 times more closer to God, whatever that may be for you. So I consider that, and I share that openly with you, because you of all people would get something like this. And I think that your audience would probably resonate with that as well, because of the fact that you're taking it outside of what's happened in the physical, and you're now taking that more to an internal place within yourself to say, okay, well, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to grow from? What are the areas that are being flashed on with light? Those trauma areas that you're now referencing and looking at, because this experience, it brings something out of you. It brings something out of you that's like, please heal this.
Yes.
Please fix this. Please attend to this. Please be aware of this. And one thing that I really caught wind of very early was I would be what you consider a passive aggressive person. I'm aggressive, but I'm not going to be like in your face and talking you out and trying to cuss at you. I'll be like, okay, I'll be aggressive in my own little bubble. And that blocks that throat chakra. It doesn't, you don't speak. And when you want to say something, you hold it in. And I think I've done that for so long in my life that something like this was like, hey, you have to go in front of a court and you have to go in front of all these people and fight for yourself and stand for yourself, stand on your rights, and stand in the person that you ultimately want to become. You don't have another choice now. And I believe that really hit me differently at the expense of, what I've lost in this temporary time frame, which is my kids. But I will say this, that's also been so helpful for me, is when you've been chosen for war, and you're going to war, and you're going to the battle, and you know that you could die, you don't take your family with you. Your family's away from you safely while you're doing what you have to do. And that's how I interpret that in my own mind as I move forward. And it's only for the time being, because I feel I'm smart enough to figure things out. I feel that there's enough love inside of me to fix the things that need to be fixed. And I am optimistic about the future, because now I'm more conscious of the things that I'm creating in my own mind. I'm more conscious of how I am towards others and the relationships that I need to mend and the relationships that I need to improve. And most importantly, the relationship that I have with myself. So we take our experiences, like I'm taking this experience and I'm trying to make it more reasonable to understand. It makes sense. And although I see CPS for what it really is, I also believe that good will triumph over evil. So staying true to my virtues, staying true to that, I do feel confident that in time, as I continue to grow, as I continue to develop, that we'll meet in a place and time in the future that will allow me to overcome these obstacles that I have at some point in my life created for me to learn from and grow from.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, man. It's instructive. It's educational. You may have conceivably saved some parent out there who's going to be listening to this video, to this podcast, a lot of turmoil with their child, just knowing that this is what this institution represents, and whatever steps they need to take to avoid that, then avoid this like the plague. So I find this of inestimable value. And guys, again, it's like many topics that we cover here on the channel, right? Health, wellness, food, eating. This is definitely a very, very large component of this, because it's like that foundation, like we were talking about earlier. Let's just say you're someone who is putting all sorts of nonsense into their body. You would not have the same level of composure that you have now, right? To be able to deal with this and come to the conclusions that you've come to, and to be able to recognize that, yeah, maybe you have to pick up that mirror and look at yourself and see how it's your responsibility that might have contributed to elements of it, all these things, right? Yeah, the whole thing is connected. We have this foundation of health and wellness that I like to get into on this channel, but there is more. There is more. We have to have responsibility to not only ourselves, but to our families, and to responsibility to know where we are in this world, what this world is around us. Because if we don't, we're going to get played like a fiddle.
I'm not prepared. I really am not prepared at all. That's baby making music. That's what that is. Let's go.
At our expense and to the benefit of these ruling elites who have set up this institution that is meant to just destroy our lives, destroy humanity. We can't really let that happen if we want a prosperous future for human evolution and the burgeoning of human consciousness. So we've gone through some fantastic information here. So guys, really just take this in. If this is new to you, then fantastic. Now you've got some understanding of how this works. It's all about cultivating responsibility for yourself. Government, like you said, has no business raising your child. Absolutely no business raising your child. And the more ground you give them, the more they will take. And they are taking. They are taking. And we've got Johnny here who's still going through this battle, right? So yeah, I really hope this was helpful for people out there. Johnny, if you've got any other closing comments, go ahead. Anything that you'd like to say finally to everybody out there?
Well, I would like to just share that when you go through something like this,
yeah,
you're not alone.
Mm.
And when people go through stuff in their life, know that you're not alone. If you knew how many families are impacted by family members or close friends after being dealt with CPS, you will see that they rip the families apart. Brothers, sisters, parents, cousins, aunts, uncles. Whenever there's a CPS story, you also have family members that are against them. So it's very common practice. They do this is what their intentions are to do, because just like all practices of evil, it needs fear to operate.
That's right.
It needs you to create fear in yourself. So when you have fear in your heart instead of love, and you're fearful of what could happen or what did happen or what else is outside of you, and they feed off of that. So we have to be able to, through these difficult and gruesome times, you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, take those breaths within and get rid of the hate, get rid of the anger, get rid of the fear, and try to bring as much love as possible. Forgive, because we're holding on to something. Something we're holding on to is keeping this present. Mm-hmm. And so we just have to, I'm just speaking from reference. When you lose your kids, it takes something from you that you just learn to appreciate so much more. But just know that you're not alone in this, and don't ever think that you are, because along with so many kids being taken, so many parents they fall off the wagon. They give up in life. There's a high rate of suicide rate in this, because it just, again, it takes something from you that God has blessed you with. A child is a gift from God. Yeah. So you just have to be mindful of that and be hopeful of the future and do your best to be the best version of yourself.
That's it. Fill your hearts with love, responsibility, and we will get through these difficulties, these trials and tribulations of living on this planet with less than reputable forces that are seeking to just take everything away from you. All right. So we've got to root ourselves in integrity, and we'll make it through this. All right. So guys, thank you so much for being part of this. Johnny, I can't thank you enough. Again, I said it already, but I find this very, very valuable for people out there to listen to, especially if they've never encountered this type of information before. So much love, my friend. If you found this helpful, found this useful, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and definitely share this video with other people who might not know about this kind of stuff yet, because this is important. We need to understand how these things work. So guys, that's going to be it for now. All right, we'll catch you on the next one. Johnny, my man, thank you so much, and best of luck in this situation that
Thank
that
you.
has come to you in your life. And of course, goodness and truth always prevail in the end, and I have the utmost faith that it'll turn in your favor. So
Thank you.
thank you so much, my man. All right, everyone. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.